What sort of stuff do you get generally? I mean, do you have a good discourse with people on Twitter?
I mean, you know, Twitter's a medium that I think all public figures are increasingly using. I'd sooner have more contact sort of through constituency surgeries, through debating with opponents, and through sort of coming onto programmes like yourselves. So there's far more to it. You know, one can't get bogged down in social media too much. Obviously, you know. I've got team members who sort of administer it from day to day, but my Twitter, I look at very closely, and it's an interesting situation because where do you draw that line? Do you not engage with the public? You know, quite frankly, I work for the taxpayer, so one has to. But you know, in the realms of decency, I think there is a line that should be drawn, and I think this line was overstepped in this instance, and obviously by the serious and professional approach from West Mercia Police, who I really think I tip my hat to them. You know, they're a fantastic organisation here.
Jim, listen, I can't let you go without asking you about Al Murray, the pub landlord. Obviously, he's standing against Nigel Farage.
I saw that, yes.
I mean, presumably, Mr. Farage is quaking in his boots, I'd imagine.
It's an interesting one because, of course, Al Murray's from a very privileged background. You know, he's Oxford educated. He's a grandson of his grandfather married an Austrian aristocrat. He's a direct descendant of the Duke of Atholl. So it's quite an interesting one because, you know, to my mind, he's
not running as himself. He's running as the pub landlord.
Yes, but I mean, he'd be running in his name. He'd be running in his name, unless he changed his name by deed poll. You know, he'd be running in the name of Al Murray. I mean, stranger things have happened, of course.
I don't think you're going to be able to stand up against the might of a pint of beer for a penny, though. That's the only. That's a serious manifesto promise.
Well, it is. Look, you're speaking to somebody. I remember my dizzy heights of the 2001 general election when UKIP was a far smaller party, where I got beaten by that titan of British politics, Dancing Ken Hanks, of the official monster rubbing loony party. So, so I'm used to wacky promises from politicians, and I'm sure there'd be a lot more wacky promises from far more serious candidates right the way across the political spectrum.
Jim,
good to
speak to you. Jim Carver represents UKIP in the West Midlands.
He's on the line now from Brussels. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Strasbourg.
You're in Strasbourg?
Because we have this ludicrous situation, Richard, where it costs £100 million a year, and we in UKIP, we take every opportunity to tell the electorates that we spend £100 million a year, 1 week a month, moving from Brussels to Strasbourg. This is where we all vote. It's ridiculous.
It's always a useful thing to do. You will appreciate, though, that there is a certain irony given the way that people view your party, UKIP, and perhaps some of the lines that have been taken in terms of race relations, and the ability of some of your colleagues to put their foot in their mouth with some of the comments they make as well. People will feel there's a certain irony about this.
Well, there is, but actually, I mean, Richard, the party is changing and has changed an awful lot. A lot of the comments made were made by previous politicians in previous parliaments, most of whom are no longer with the party. And I think it's a sign of the maturity of UKIP. How we are taking on board various issues. And obviously, I've been again at this meeting. They said, well, why are you getting involved? Don't you realise? This could be political suicide for you. And I thought, well, that's quite a strong thing to say, Richie. This is something I believe in, and if you're not in politics, you can't stand up for what you believe in, whether it be leaving Europe, whether it may be RGT rights, whether it may be green issues, whatever. You shouldn't be in politics, and it's a duty of any politician to engage in issues they're passionate about. And maybe if more politicians did that, more people would turn out to vote, Richard.
If you're overweight and somebody calls you a fat git, is that the wrong side of the line? Because that, I know, would upset a lot of people that I know are overweight.
It would, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for free speech, but this is a particular word that people find deeply offensive. My point is, if we are going to address, the wider issues affecting these communities, I was at the UKIP conference last year in Doncaster, and Trevor Phillips, Commissioner Racial Equality.
I do, yeah.
And we were having a chat, and I said, look, why do you never pick up on the discrimination facing the various gypsy communities? And he said, I've got to say, Jim, he said, you're spot on. He said, they are the most discriminated community in the UK. And this is exactly my point. Let's actually take this opportunity to say what is and isn't acceptable. And actually, by engaging, we can actually engage with these communities and actually look to move forward.